Hi, Lisa. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk to us at Manhattan Soccer Club. I know that our players and coaches enjoy hearing from, people who are in the game that have accomplished as much as you have. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I enjoy giving back and getting to share my journey with other people. So it's great.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Can you, I guess, just start us off by, discussing why you decided to take on coaching as your full-time career?
Yeah, I was really lucky in the fact that I knew really what I loved about the game and that I wanted to be a coach really early on. I actually was even discouraged some when I was a young player coming up that coaching wasn't necessarily a professional pathway. And it probably wasn't. I just knew that I wanted to be in coaching and didn't know it would be a profession to the point where when I was in college, instead of doing student teaching, because I went on a student teaching track, I actually did an internship with Tony DeChico, former women's national team coach. And I worked on the fact that I was like, I'm going to create this opportunity for myself to be in coaching. It wasn't really popular at the time, but there were Division I jobs starting to pop up, a lot of them because of Title IX. And I just knew that when I was on the field, I was happy. And I knew that that's where I found a lot of joy. And so I wanted to be in a career where I enjoyed my job every day. And I knew that I could do that in coaching. So I was really lucky that I started coaching at a really young age and was able to then create that into a career. And the key was getting around good coaches that really think of it as a profession. I think we have a lot of coaches out there that they think of it as something that they do as a hobby. And I acted like this is going to be a job for me. And so I had a curriculum early on for what we're going to do with our kids. I had in place ideas about the game that other people thought about once they arrived at the field, I think. And so I kind of created it and thought of it as a profession early on and how I dealt with the position. And that's been led to jobs, I think, for me.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think that that's one of the reasons why I got into coaching was, how many times did I hear growing up people telling me how much they didn't like their jobs or how they weren't happy in their jobs, and really being on the field is the place that brings me the most joy. And, my husband's the same way, and being able to bring our 4-year-old daughter up in an understanding that you can love your job and that there are careers out there that just bring happiness, and help other people instead of, being miserable is really important.
Yeah, I think coaches aren't necessarily rich people, but we're rich in a different way. And if you do it right and get in and around the right people, it can be something you make a living at.
Yep, absolutely. Can you talk about some of the biggest obstacles that you faced while coaching?
Yeah, I think it's funny. I think just the fact that when I was coming up, coaching wasn't necessarily a career was one of the challenges. But I also think that the big obstacles I've presented have been every time I've failed, and now looking back at those times, I feel like I'm at the University of Rhode Island, and they get a new athletic director, and I end up getting fired. All the women end up getting fired, actually. And so in the moment, I think that's a personal failure. I took it very personally. But then as you look back, okay, they fired the softball coach who's a woman. They fired a soccer coach who's a woman. And it ended up being a court case when he went after the SWA. So that it really turned into an opportunity to advocate for myself as a female coach. It really opened my eyes that women were treated differently, because up until then in my career, I had really felt like, no, I'm a good coach. I'm not being treated differently. I'm getting the same opportunities. So it wasn't until then that I realized that that was a barrier, because it happened to me. But that was a real challenge in my career and an opportunity, I think, in the way that that's when I went and was the assistant with Mark Kikorian at Florida State, which is a pretty big job after taking that hit. So I didn't flounder for long. I think people rose up and found me an opportunity. McDarcy made the introduction, and I was able to go end up at Florida State instead of budding program. I ended up going to the national championship with them, or the Final Four that year with them. And I really figured out that I didn't want to be in college coaching that year because, again, when I talk about where I find joy is with being on the field. And when you're a college coach, you're not on the field as much as you are in other areas of the game. So in the youth game, you're on the field a ton and you get to really impact people. So I found a lot of joy in that. And then what happened was Tony DiCicco asked me to be his assistant for the Boston Breakers. So I went from being down and out to working with top brains in the game with Mark Kikorian at Florida State to then being asked by the biggest guy in the game to be his assistant in the professional league. So I think it's just how you roll through failure, and I think how you take the lessons from that. And I've had other moments where we all kind of end up making mistakes, and so if you really take those and turn those into opportunities to learn and evaluate where you are. I was grinding at URI, and I thought I was enjoying it at the moment. But when I really look back at it, I was like, I'm just not on the field enough, and I really need to reevaluate where I want to be in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you tell us what your favorite coaching moment has been throughout your career?
Yeah, people ask me about this, and then people ask me who my favorite player is a lot too, and that's always a hard one. But for me right now, I've had great moments. I think it's important to point out that I have great moments that I'm really proud of that have happened off the field in my coaching. If you look at some of the professional players we've worked with, we really encourage them to look at what they were going to do after soccer as well. And you look at Tiffany Weimer, and at Adelaide, I coached as a kid. They created a Duncan brand. So they've gone on and used the game to do that. You look at Taryn Hemmings and Leslie Osborne and Tarpley, and those guys have created Sweat, which is a cosmetic thing that you can use for your face that doesn't show when you sweat or doesn't clump up when you sweat. So those were things they talked about, like being business owners and doing things when they were players and they're just sitting around the locker room and asking them. So I love seeing them be successful on the field and off the field. But my greatest joy to this date in my coaching was I was the head coach for Papua New Guinea, and the U20 national team hosted the World Cup. The country of Papua New Guinea hosted the World Cup. Before they got to host, they had no team. They didn't have a U20 team. So they had a U17 team that had done some stuff, and they had a national team, but they didn't actually have a U20 team. So I had to go put together a team in less than I think we had 14 months. So just over a year. And we only trained really for about 8 months. So leading up to the World Cup, because it took time to get things in place. And so that team, we ended up losing big in the games, like from a score perspective, but we had 3 goals during that World Cup. And the goals were that every game we would fight. So no matter what the score of the game was, I didn't want to see us on the field walking because the score's 7-0 or 6-0, whatever. We played Brazil, who won their championship that year. We played Sweden, who was coming from the best of Europe, and we played North Korea. And North Korea won the U17 World Cup the year before, or 2 years before. So they're the defending champions. So we didn't have an easy group. They didn't even throw us like something that where we could try to do something in. We literally played the best teams in there. And so our goal was, that was our first goal. No walking, we're still going to try start to finish and give our best. So, and they did that. And then our second goal was we didn't want to let the score go into 10-0. We really wanted everything to be under 10. That was really important to us. And so, and our highest score was 9-0, and that was the first game against Brazil. And I think we were a little emotional in that game. So the score, we gave up goals early that we really shouldn't have, just because they were still crying after the national anthem when the game got kicked off. And then the last goal was to score one goal so our country could cheer us on in our environment.
Yeah.
And We go into North Korea. North Korea is the favorite. They blew out Brazil. They beat Sweden easily, and we've lost to those teams by quite handily before. And we end up tying the game with them 1-1 in like the 8th minute. And so we score a goal, and everybody goes nuts and everybody goes crazy.
Mm-hmm.
North Korea goes and puts their stars back in because they had sat 2 players that they thought they could rest during the game. They go and they sub those 2 players in a panic mode. They really shouldn't have panicked. They didn't need to do that, but they would have got back at us as the game went on because we were about 30 minutes fit, 40 minutes fit. So after that, the wheels kind of came off for us. But that moment made them national heroes. How they represented, how we never quit, made them national heroes, and really showed a country that doesn't respect women what women can do if given opportunities. So that has to be my best coaching moment to this day, is that time with those girls, and then that moment, seeing all the hard work they put in, really come to fruition when that goal happened. They actually in the final had us come back, and at halftime the girls walked around and got a standing ovation on the field from the crowd, and how we represented well. So I think it was a changing point for women and what girls can do in Papua New Guinea. I think that was really important.
That's incredible, that story. Wow, yeah, no, that's something definitely to be proud of. I mean, it just shows that, if you do work hard and you do, you don't give up, that there are some gains to it, whether it be a championship or whether it be just a life lesson that you can take out of it, to teach younger girls that are looking up to them as their heroes. They see them, not give up. That's amazing.
Yeah, I think it's really important as coaches and as players that we understand how we measure success and what that really means. What are the obstacles in front of us for that particular group of players? And because of course we would have loved to win a game in the World Cup at home, but for us that would have been unattainable. So we set really goals that were attainable, and scoring that goal was a reach. But because we worked hard, and Tony used to always say, earn the right to play well, we earned that goal, I think, by the work they put in.
Yeah. I mean, and I think it's an important lesson for what we're faced with now, these unprecedented times going on with the COVID-19, and, our kids are learning a new normal. They're learning how they need to train on their own, how to be self-motivators, and, how to go ahead and take the information that they're getting, via, Google Classroom, or, our Zoom calls that we have with them, and really, find the time and the effort to put in themselves so that they don't fall behind in the game. And I've heard, a couple of times people have called this, the separated season. And, I've asked, my girls, what does that mean to you? Because, the obvious is that it's a season where you're separated from your teammates. But to me, it really means it's a season that's going to separate out who really wants it versus who's just in it for the fun of it. Because the players that are, really putting the work in are gonna, they're not gonna skip a beat, even though they're not with their conventional teams, where the kids that are at home, taking, the time to catch up on their Netflix or whatever is, they're gonna struggle when they step back on the field. Is there anything that you could give our players, any advice on how to, get through this time period that we're faced with?
Yeah, I think what's happened in USU soccer is that all of us tend to be in all these clubs, right, that are doing a lot of the same things. And it's a little bit of a time where we have been looking to be the same as, right? So my friends play at this level, I'm going to go play at that level. But what we're finding now is that you're right. It is going to separate out who wants to play well, and I don't think in a negative way necessarily. Like, I think there's something to be said about the fact that it's okay if you just want to play the game for fun. Mm-hmm. I don't think kids in this generation have been able to say that. Hey, I just want to play because it's fun for me. I enjoy being with my friends, and I want to be on the field with people, and maybe play locally and not travel everywhere and not keep up with everybody. I think that there's something to be said for that being okay, for it to be a high school sport instead of a DA program. So I think we may be giving the game back to kids for a bit, because we've professionalized youth sports a little bit, I think. But there are kids out there that are doing the work, that have really, this is going to show that this is what they really want. They've missed it so badly. And for those kids, I think we'll have really good opportunities for them to show their stuff. But I think, again, like you or I, was a little bit of a reflection moment for me. I think this is a reflection moment for youth soccer and youth sports to say, what is our role within the development of players? If we know that only 7% of players go on and play in college, and we look at our teams and only 1% go and play professional sport, what should be of real value? And some of the things we're able to do right now with them off the field, because we're not worried about wins, is actually should continue to be important going forward. It should be important to have conversation about setting realistic goals. It should be important to have conversations about the game and who they want to be, and this individual pathway, and them setting up and them being the driving force of whether they get better. When they show up to us, it's easy for us to drive them. It's easy for us to say, hey, let's get going. But you're going to see different outcomes for different players. And I think, one, we need to be okay with that, because maybe they were put in a car that was driving really fast and they couldn't jump off, and they wanted to, but they didn't know how to tell mom and dad. They didn't know how to really look at players and say, okay, do we need to be doing all of this for every kid in America? Or can we be doing it at a lesser scale that fits their model and allows them to be maybe a little more diversified, do a little more reading, do a little more academics? And then for those kids that really need this higher level stuff, we still keep those programs, but on a smaller scale. That's how I feel about youth sports right now. I think youth sports have taken an adult model to the game, and maybe we need to go back and look at that. And for kids, I think you need to do, why am I so passionate about it? I'm passionate about it because I find joy in it. And they need to find that joy again, and not just be hopping back in the car. Yeah. So it's a good time for reflection for coaches and players about what's really important in youth sports. What should we be giving everybody? And we should be meeting them where they are at, not dragging them along with us, I think.
Yeah. And using your, I guess the last question is, using all of your experience that you've had, and, it's pretty impressive. What is something that you wish that somebody who is in your shoes had told a younger coach or a less experienced coach in you when you were coming up?
Yeah, I think one is just to be really keen on the fact that there's going to be big failures. I think somebody that plays sports and stuff, we hate to fail. We're competitive. And that those moments are actually where you'll have the most growth. So don't be safe. Don't play it safe. Don't do things that are, think outside the box a little bit. Try things that maybe don't work, and then go back and reevaluate things and see what's important. And to really keep the game about your players and not about who you are. That's where you'll find actually the most reward is when you as a coach are not worried about your results, not worried about your wins, but worried about how are your players feeling, how are they developing, and if they're improving, the results will come. So don't play in a lineup that is safe. Move players around, have players playing different positions, because those players are going to come back. And it may take longer. They're going to come back in 2 or 3 years. Hey, I'm a better player because you made me play right back and left back, and I had to play up top, and I was prepared when I went to college. I think that has more reflection on who you are as a coach and what you do developmentally than, oh, I ended up having an undefeated season. In fact, in my club, if you have an undefeated season, then I'm upset with you as a young coach, because then I know you probably played either you're playing at the wrong level, so your team's just clearly better than everybody else. So you're not giving them the right challenge. And two, or you're playing your best players to find results. Like, have a tie every once in a while, move things around. So especially if you're blowing people out. So I'm like, give up 2 goals early in the game because you've stuck your worst player in goal, you know, and then you have to fight back and get those 2 goals or 3 goals back to win the game. Like, those are coachable moments. So are you putting them in moments where they're stressful? And then you get to the state cup or you get to the tournament final, whatever, then you play your best players. But that league play should really be about, how do I develop players and how do they find, how are they, I'm putting them in challenges that they have to solve. It's really important to me.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's really good advice. I just wanted to thank you for your time. I can't it's understated enough how much this means to the club to have people come out and give advice and tell a little bit about their experience and take their time out of their busy schedule. So we really do appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I was nice to Darren. I didn't tell any funny stories, so hopefully he's happy.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll appreciate that. All right. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Thanks.
Thank you. Have a good one. Stay safe.
You too. Bye.
Bye.